Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome to the Board of Multnomah County Commissioners' 5th budget work session. As we begin today, I want to make sure everyone is aware that questions from last week's presentations need to be submitted by end of day Wednesday. We need all questions from presentations delivered within 3 days. These timelines will enable the budget team and departments to respond in a timely manner. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking. When presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. And don't forget to silence your electronic devices. Today's first work session is on the Office of Sustainability. John Washutinsky will be leading this conversation. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is John Washutinsky. I'm the Director of Sustainability here at Multnomah County, and pleased to be here to talk about our FY 2024 proposed budget. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over our mission, vision, values, and how we root that in equity, talk about some of our accomplishments from the past year, dive into some budget specifics, including some funding from the state around the American Rescue Plan, and some one-time only funding that's proposed in the chair's budget. Next slide, please. So we really tried to root our mission in the mission of the county, which is to serve the folks who are most in need, most vulnerable in our community. And we really think that that's not only the right thing to do, but it also makes our work more efficacious. That's you'll hopefully see that theme as we move through some of the examples of our work over the past year. Next slide, please. I want to lead off with probably the largest single project for my team, which is the climate justice plan. We started out a couple of years ago with developing a process that we called Climate Justice by Design, and now we're applying that process to develop a plan with community-based collaboration model with frontline organizations to work towards climate justice goals. We're really applying a vision, power, solutions model. So rather than sort of starting with our solutions, we want to start with our vision. Where is it that the community wants to go when it comes to this global problem that manifests here at the local level? So we've made up over the past year executive committee to help guide this work. That includes our anchor partner, Coalition for Communities of Color, Unite Oregon, Familias en Acción, Urban League, and just individuals from the community. We've just had a climate justice convening on Earth Day, April 22nd of this year. And we plan to use the information we've gathered from that convening and other forums in order to develop a climate justice framework that's really going to bring together this vision of climate justice for the community and present it to the board in July. After that, we'll be doing more engagement with the community to shop this vision around with various constituencies, and then from that vision, develop actions that the county and our partners at the City of Portland can take in order to help move the community in that direction. Next slide, please. Here is just a sampling of some images from our climate justice convening that we held at the June Key Delta Center. Of course, an important symbolic landmark in our community, former gas station turned by the Deltas into a living building community center. And from here, you can see lots of folks from government and community coming together. We had live translation, we had food, and we had people on a beautiful Saturday spending their time talking about their hopes and aspirations for the community. Next slide, please. In addition to climate planning, we also focus quite a bit on energy policy. We've worked in a coalition of community-based organizations, environmental organizations, and customer advocates to really pursue some important wins. We've secured improvements to disconnection rules including less punitive rules for low-income customers and safer cold weather moratorium thresholds. Persuaded Pacific Power and Northwest Natural to design utility discount programs with deep discounts for those with the lowest incomes in our community. Persuaded the Public Utility Commission to adopt guidelines on electric utilities centering energy justice and community resilience as they decarbonize under the 100% Clean Energy for All bill, HB 2021, and began co-facilitating a group of grassroots energy justice advocates who bring their lived experience to clean energy proceedings at the Public Utility Commission. We also briefed the board earlier this year on our progress towards the board's goal of 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. Next slide, please. Another project near and dear to my heart is what we call Green Gresham, Healthy Gresham. This really stemmed out of research that showed that there was areas in the city of Gresham with very low tree canopy cover, high social vulnerability, and nobody putting in place a tree planting program to try to address that issue. So with our partners at the city of Gresham and Friends of Trees, we applied for funding from the Soil and Water Conservation District. And for the past 5 years, we've been coming together to plant trees, over 506 trees over the past 5 years. Or I guess 506 trees exactly over the past 5 years, and engaged, hundreds of volunteers for thousands of hours of volunteer time. We've employed 15 young people through the Summer Works program to do summer tree maintenance activities, hosted trees and health symposium, engaged with city managers across East County, and working to really develop more momentum around tree canopy, tree planting in East County. Next slide, please. Air quality continues to be a major issue for us. We worked across departments to support clean air for everyone all the time, as the board has articulated, focusing on wood burning, which is our largest source of particulate matter, human-caused particulate matter in our airshed. With the health department and DCHS YFS team, we worked to create a wood stove exchange program, thanks to funding from the state ARP funds. I'll talk more about that later. So this included building a program guide, developing client and geographic prioritization based on board guidance and data, developing application forms and review process, hiring 2 new positions in YFS, and recruiting and doing an RFP for contractors. In later slides, I'll share more detail about the current progress. We also supported our friends in environmental health this year as they reported about the dangers of gas stoves to indoor air quality, highlighting this issue that has become a national cause for concern as more people learn about the dangers of combustion when it comes to indoor air quality. Next slide, please. So last year, in last year's or this current fiscal year's budget, the board approved funding for a new position in the Office of Sustainability. And we've recruited for that position now and hired a climate resilience coordinator. So this is a big boon for the county to coordinate across departments. And has been particularly a huge shout out to Commissioner Stegman and Leanne in her office for helping to pioneer some of this work. So sorry, I lost my place in my talking points. So the additional capacity is allowing us to expand our work to build on the climate resilience work that Commissioner Stegman's office has already been doing, coordinating and collaborating with community groups, and building capacity to get external funding, especially as we look to state and federal sources like the Inflation Reduction Act. The thing about East County is that, as everybody on the board already knows, is there's fewer resources out there. There's no Portland Clean Energy Fund. There's fewer professional staff working on emergency management at the city level. So being able to partner with East County community-based organizations and governments is really important when addressing issues related to climate resilience. One way that that's been manifesting is looking at Cook Plaza, which is a building that the county acquired, the Joint Office of Homeless Services, and we've been partnered with the Joint Office, our Facility and Property Management division, to look at that facility for architectural enhancements that can prevent it from losing power in the event of power outage, making sure there's clean air indoors in the event of smoky skies, and helping to reinforce the building against structural damage during an earthquake, so that when one of those bad things happen, the building can continue to serve its core function, supporting the houseless neighbors in East County. We're also working on the resilience network started by the Commissioner's Office. Working with We All Rise to continue building off the work and momentum of the East County Resilience Network, which is a collaboration of community-based organizations engaged in resilience building work in East County. Currently, we're exploring opportunities for how to continue expanding this group, provide educational workshops on emergency preparedness, such as how to cope with extreme heat and other resilience topics, and exploring the role of this network to play in the county's emergency response efforts. Of course, this is done in close collaboration with our Office of Emergency Management. We're also looking at ways that we can take this concept of resilience hubs, culturally specific resilience hubs especially, and looking to work with other organizations throughout the county like Barbie's Village, Morningstar Church, and in addition to the East Portland Resilience Coalition, and the East Portland Resilience Coalition, sorry. So we definitely would look forward to coordinating more around this. Next slide, please. Okay, the slide is a little funny, but there's lots of things to talk about. So the Office of Sustainability, we continue to engage with both the staff and community members through annual education campaigns like Earth Month, Bike Month, and Eco Challenge, in-person and virtual events, and constant communications pushes through videos, website posts, and social media. The campaign events and communications we create are developed collaboratively to prioritize the needs and interests of people we serve. Some examples of this collaboration include working with community partners, neighbors, neighboring local governments, and county staff, like the REACH program and environmental health teams. We reached, in this current fiscal year, 837 people through events and several thousand more through virtual communications. One event that we're actually really proud of just happened was the East County Learn, Share, Do Fair, developed with our partners at the City of Gresham, Community Service Network of Oregon, and City of Portland. The East County Learn, Share, Do Fair was created specifically for East County residents and featured several of our own county programs and departments, as well as exhibitors and workshops presented from community strengthening organizations like Growing Gardens, Centennial Neighborhood Emergency Team, 211, Community Energy Project, Friends of Trees, among many more. Next slide, please. Oh, well, the next slide is the best one because it's pictures of all our wonderful faces. There we are. So this year we welcome 2 new members, Nicole Buchanan and Monique Smiley. Sorry, Commissioner Jayapal. We are really excited to have a full complement of staff because there's lots to do. Next slide, please. Here you can see our budget breakout. So you can see that most of our funding goes to personnel, but we do have some one-time only general fund money this year as well that I'll go into more detail. Next slide, please. So last year, you could see that we had, sorry, I think I'm going to talk about this on the next slide. Now I'm getting a little confused. So last year, I just want to highlight in this slide, we had for the food access focus, there was $500,000 of ARP money. I'll talk more detail about in a second about what we've accomplished to date. That's transitioned to $400,000 of general fund in the proposed budget. There's also a new out-of-target offer, and then a couple of existing state-funded ARP projects that I'll talk about in more detail in some slides here. Next slide, please. So I'll talk about school buses and wood stoves. Now, school buses, we have signed intergovernmental agreements with Centennial School District and Portland Public Schools. This is funding that we got from the state to support school bus electrification. So that's going to be happening here imminently. Hopefully, they'll be sending us invoices for their new shiny electric powered school buses. We've also have dollars for the wood stove exchange program, and I'll get into some more detail around that in the next slide. So here's our project snapshot. So far, this is, I think, April 27th or something like that. Yeah, April 27th is my birthday. So we've spent, over $70,000 and obligated, or we've obligated up to $70,000. So this is great progress that we've made. And our burn rate or our spend rate is increasing as we ramp up around this work. So far we've got 17 projects obligated. We've 7 projects completed, and we're well on our way to spending this money all the way down. And also, I should say, looking actively for additional funding to support this important work. And you can see sort of our flow chart here, where someone applies, their application is reviewed by our technical staff. There's a site visit to the person's home by our technical staff. Assuming all that checks out, then they're assigned a contractor. A contractor comes, performs the work, and then we test them out of the program to make sure that the work is performed properly and that the homeowner is satisfied with the work. We're really trying to target low-income folks, low and moderate income folks who use wood to heat their homes in order to maximize pollution reduction and also make sure that we're helping people who need the help the most. Next slide, please. We're also working a lot on developing the crop site. Last summer, we had this lovely groundbreaking ceremony. There wasn't much to be seen out there, some dry dirt, as you can see from the picture. We also celebrated my dear friend and colleague, Jerry Hunter, who started the crops program a few years back, I guess 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or even longer. So we'll have a permanent sign installed once the construction is complete, honoring Jerry. So next slide, please. We have water access at the site now, so they can actually farm and water their plants. There's orchards that have been planted and fencing to just make sure the deer don't eat the trees. We have a wash pack station under construction, high tunnel under construction, and design drawings for the barn and greenhouse and road access road submitted to City of Troutdale. And we're waiting on permits so we can begin construction. Obviously, that's taken us a little longer than hoped for. So then in the next fiscal year, we'll actually do the construction phases as we obtain the permits. Next slide, please. And then just finally to highlight the Out of Target offer, which is to honor some of the people who are lost, or honor the people that were lost in the 2021 due to excessive heat. I think all of us can remember back to that awful period of time when we had unprecedented amounts of warm days and warm nights that led to the death of 70 people that summer. That event, I think, continues to haunt me. I'm sure many other of residents in the county. And as a way of healing and protecting our community in the future, the chair has sponsored this idea of planting more shade trees so that not only can we memorialize the folks who we lost, but also protect the community going forward. And next slide. I think that's the extent of my presentation. And I'll end on this picture of me talking to the EPA director and our 2 senators.
Thank you so much, John, for that. I'll go to the board for any questions or comments. Commissioner Rosenbaum, we will start with you.
Thank you. So great presentation. I'm pleased to be on the council representing the council on the well, at any rate, but I wanted to ask you about you mentioned the Crops Farm, and that was being funded with ARP funding, correct?
Yes.
So it doesn't have funding in the current, or I mean, the projected budget, does it?
So in this current fiscal year, it's ARP funding, and we'll obviously not be spending down the full $500,000 that was allocated by the board for this current fiscal year. And the proposal is that next fiscal year, the funding will be reduced since we've spent down some of that funding, and it will switch to general fund from ARP.
Can you talk about what the impact of that reduced funding is going to be then?
I don't think there's actually an impact. We've been spending, so we'll have spent some of this work to get design drawings, to get permits, which unfortunately aren't cheap, and then also paying for some other design elements that were planned for the site, like the wash pack station and orchards, et cetera.
But is the idea that it would be sort of self-sustaining then after it got set up, or?
The idea is that we build out the infrastructure, and then that the farm is designed to be self-sustaining in the sense that the farmers are not growing their food and giving it away. They're growing their food and selling it into markets, be it our institutional markets or CSA programs or things like that.
So money would be coming in through the sales of things that were grown there, and then that money could be put back into.
We're running it as an incubator farm, and so the Mudbone Grown is our lead farm group there, and then they're recruiting in other African American and African immigrant farmers to sublease the parts of the farm, and they share resources. They're going to share resources like use of a tractor, tools, etc., and then get mentored by Mudbone Grown as they kind of come into as they develop business acumen in the farming industry, and that the sale of the produce will sustain their businesses going forward. And the biggest, I would just say, like the hurdles we're trying to help overcome for these farmers is access to capital. And what I mean by capital is not necessarily like the cost of land and the cost of equipment, which are big barriers. If as we all know, buying farmland is extremely expensive. Having access to it, and especially access that is close driving distance or even transit distance from the city of Portland, where many people live.
Yeah, it seems like a great program. And also with all of the mergers and closures of places for people to shop for fresh food, it's also a source of fresh food. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's programs at the county, like through our REACH program, where there's subsidized CSA shares for folks who are involved with various programs that the county runs, and they're actually trying to buy from culturally specific farmers, like the farmers who are participating in the crops program.
Great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John. Really love to see the Friends of Trees. Is there going to be more? Tell me about the funding.
Yeah, thank you. It's mostly been funding from the Soil and Water Conservation District, and that we have funding through this end of this calendar year, I believe. So we'll do one more planting in the fall. In addition, we plan to build off of that partnership for the memorial tree planting as well, although we'll have to do a procurement to secure a planting partner.
That's a great idea. So thank you, Chair. Do we know like where those trees will be planted geographically?
My thought was that would be focused on low tree canopy areas in East County.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
And in addition, we're looking for further grant funding. The U.S. Forest Service is issuing a $1 billion NOFA that's due at the end of June 1st. Our friends at Friends of Trees are applying for that funding. We plan to support them in that effort, and that would bring trees to East Portland and into West Gresham, which is a contiguous area.
Oh, that's really exciting. If you haven't done it, it is so fun, and I learn so much every time I go. So it's a great program. I wanted to give you kudos to the Learn, Share, Do fair, and it was sad because there were so many events that were going on that day, but it was amazing. I mean, I learned how to make an air filter over a box fan. Yeah, so I mean, it's not that hard, but I didn't know how to do it. Now I do. So it was such a great event. So I'm hopeful that you'll be able to continue those and
Yeah, absolutely.
get more folks. So yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Mim from my team just knocked it out of the park, and that's something we definitely hope to keep doing. And it served both the city of Portland and people in Gresham and East County. So
It was fantastic. And love the picture of Jerry
Yeah.
Hunter. That was great. And then just wanted to highlight the work that we've been partnering with you around resilience hubs with the building, the Cook Plaza building. And I'm really excited that later this week we will be doing a site visit.
Yeah.
And it's so great because we've got cross-departmental collaboration. We have emergency management. Chris Voss, we've wrangled him into taking his team out there along with John and his office to look at when we buy buildings or when we retrofit or both. I believe, and I'll be talking more to you all probably after budget, because I think that it is important for us to embed a policy that looks at resiliency. Because like there are like in last year's budget, we got like, I don't know, what was it, $94,000 for the analysis of Cook Plaza. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, John.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So yeah, we continue to look for opportunities to embed resilience into county facilities. Just as another example, we applied for funding from the Oregon Department of Energy for a microgrid project at the East County Library, where we would combine solar panels with battery storage to ensure uninterrupted power at that facility. But that's an example of the type of thing that we're going to look at for Cook Plaza. So what's the cost of designing solar power combined with battery storage to ensure uninterrupted power? What's the additional filtration that would be needed in the HVAC system to ensure clean air indoors when there's smoky skies? What's the again, seismic resiliency as a core component as well? So yeah, I think physically safe infrastructure that can continue to serve the intended function post disaster is going to be a critical component for us as we move forward.
Great, thank you. So yeah, so what I hope to talk more to you all about later is about creating a policy that says we do an analysis whenever we purchase or renovate a building to see, because it's way, way less expensive to do this stuff on the front end, obviously, than doing it on the back end. So, and then the final thing I just wanted to mention is that, during the Eagle Creek fires, many of us were out. And I remember specifically being out at Mount Hood Community College, and why the Cook Plaza is so important to have emergency services there is that, we're charged with serving our most vulnerable populations. But I have to tell you, houseless individuals did not feel welcomed into the emergency centers for a variety of reasons. I witnessed many of them come in maybe and they would get food or water, but they did not stay. They did not feel welcome. They did not feel safe. And so when we do cross-departmental efforts like this, combining the work of the Joint Office with emergency management and with sustainability, that's how we best serve our most marginalized community members. So I want to thank you and all of the departments for working together. I get really excited when, 2 + 2 = 10, and certainly the work that you're doing adds up to 10. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Commissioner Myron.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you, John. I have a couple of questions just in terms of, let's see, we're trying to go through my notes here. I have them in multiple places, making it hard.
Sounds like my notes.
For the woods, going to the wood smoke, the wood stove program, it sounds like, I just want to figure out the funding and the different mechanisms of funding there. So was it in last fiscal year's budget that there was 500,000 allocated?
Yeah, that's correct. So Commissioner Jayapal worked with, I believe it was Senator Dembro, to allocate state ARP funding to the specific purpose. So we have a contract with the state of Oregon for those dollars, and we have, as you could see, as you saw from the update, we've spent down some of those dollars, but not all of them as of now. So we intend to use the next year to finish drawing down those resources.
And so that's what so that's a carryover or I don't know how we.
Yeah, yeah, I'm seeing the nod from Christian. It's carryover. Sounds like the right word. Yep.
And how do we determine, I mean, do we have an idea of the universe of stoves that we need to replace, and how are people prioritized to get the replacement stoves?
Yeah, so the collaboration with the health department and the DCHS led to us developing a program guide, which I'm happy to share with you, that outlines how we prioritize folks. But just to say generally, we looked at census tracts where we think the highest levels of wood smoke pollution exist, overlaid with environmental justice factors to develop a couple of geographic priority areas. In addition, we look at income, measures of income to determine sort of levels of funding commensurate. So the lower the income, the higher the amount of funding, essentially. Although, I should say though, and this sometimes higher income people can also be burners, and so we also want to help them as well to transition to cleaner fuel sources.
And so do we proactively go out to people who already have who are in our programs?
Yep.
And how do we find the actual people?
Right. So through our curtailment program, we have a exemptions process. So if for example wood heating is your only source of heating, you can apply for an exemption from our curtailment program. So that on days when we are calling a red day, you can continue to burn because heating your home is more important than preventing the pollution in that case. And so that's for an example of how we've prioritized reaching out to those populations. And then we're also, our program staff is working closely with community-based organizations that have relationships like NEA or Verde or sorry, I'm blinking now as I think about other organizations, but doing that relationship building to help refer clients to our programs, and and sometimes since the program is embedded within the community energy program, there's of course clients coming into that program through the weatherization program. If they can't get served because of their income thresholds through the weatherization program, it's possible that they can get served through this program if they heat with wood. So a variety of methodologies, yeah. I think so, to date we've done 17. We estimated that we would do about 60 with this level of funding. Unfortunately, it's pretty expensive, around $11,000 a home when we're paying full freight. But we've also designed the program to overlap with an Energy Trust of Oregon incentives to try to spread the money further, so we can braid Energy Trust of Oregon incentives with our funding in order to try to reduce the cost to the county on a specific project and make sure we're maximizing other sources of funding too. So yeah, unfortunately, we won't know exact number, but our estimate is about 60 homes.
And do we foresee that we'll be able to provide double the amount next year? What is in place that'll be different to allow us to reach that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the past fiscal year, we didn't get staff to actually start implementing the program until about January. So which is to say that we weren't idle in that time. So in order to make sure that we could get to the point where we're actually spent down as much as we have at this point, we worked to, like I said, develop a program guide, open up an application portal, hire to start the RFP process for contractors and get that going. So by the time staff started, we actually had clients on the waiting list. We had contractors ready to go. We had a program application and screening process ready to go. And so, that's and our 2 program staff are dynamite, and they're just gonna churn through projects, and they already are.
It's great. And not great that it took till January, but great that they're in. And let's see. One just sort of when I think about some of these projects, it reminds me of leaf blower. What are we doing with leaf blowers these days? Because I just remember prior budget sessions and lots and lots and lots of leaf blower people. And
Yeah, they're still around. We are working with the coalition, the Quiet Clean PDX Coalition. I just met with them last week to talk about our path forward. There was the work group recommendations around, banning leaf blowers, banning the sale. So we're working now to see what's within the county's scope of authority to actually implement. How can we work with our partners in the city of Portland to see what they can implement? But I think it continues to be an important issue and something that we definitely intend to work on, and and build off of the work that the chair did as a commissioner.
so I thought this has it been a year or 2 years so we don't know what's at this point, what's within this county's scope of authority with this?
It's a novel.
I mean, it feels like that we've been working.
I have a great sense of I have a pretty good sense of it. I mean, I don't want to do policy making from here, but I'm happy to talk to you about it more because
I know
yeah.
my office has received a lot of communication that's been pretty frustrated about the process and where it went, and so it's good to know that it sounds like something is happening. I would love to hear more about it.
Absolutely.
The other, let's see, I'm just curious. I went to an amazing, it was the East Portland Community Gardens. It was through Unite Oregon. I went and visited one of their gardens last year, and it was incredible. And it sounds like their efforts are so deeply aligned with a lot of the sustainability work and community work, and beneficial to our immigrant and refugee community. Are we connected with them at all? Have we pursued any partnerships with that group in gardens?
Not in gardens specifically. Unite Oregon is on our climate justice steering executive committee, and so we're working with their staff really closely practically every day. But the garden issue has not specifically come up.
They haven't raised it. Or
They haven't raised it with us. No.
I think it's something I will raise. And it's just a very cool concept. So that's awesome. And then I had just one last question. It was about the crops program. And it's getting to, again, our program offers and the way we do the budget that sometimes can be, always is confusing to me. But the outcome measure that is listed is to increase the number of Black farmers in Multnomah County by 1%. 1% of what, and how many Black farmers will this be? How are we measuring that? Where are we at in that goal?
Yep. So we look to the USDA Census of Farmers. They do every 5 years. They do a analysis of how many farmers per county and the demographic breakdown of those farmers. And in the most recent census, there was 3. You didn't mishear me. There was 3. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so all right, that's great. Maybe it should have been 100%. We could get to 6, I think. That's math isn't my strong suit, maybe. But let's. I'm happy to examine that further.
Yeah. So there's 3 for the crops and the crops program.
There's 3 according to the USDA Census Bureau, the farmer census. in 2017, the last time the census was performed, there were 3 Black farmers in Multnomah County. And the census is going to be performed again this year, I believe. So that will give us the indication of whether we're moving in the right direction or not when it comes to the number of farmers Black farmers in Multnomah County, hopefully.
Well, I'd love to talk more about that program with you too.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Jayapal.
Thanks, John. So much really great stuff. That climate action plan, climate justice plan, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that develops. I think that's super exciting. Couple questions. Commissioner Myron actually asked some of the questions I had about the wood stove program. It was Senator Dembro, and shout out to him and appreciation. He actually gave us double what I asked for, which is a great response.
Yeah, we should have you ask for more stuff.
I should have asked for more. Absolutely. I did have some, similar questions about how we're identifying the applicants. And I will say that I wonder about using the exemptions process, because I wonder how many people actually know that there is an exemptions process. Maybe it's a lot, but I'm kind of curious about that. It seems to me that working with community partners is the best way. And so that leads to one of the questions I've had, even had last year, about why we are staffing internally rather than contracting out to our community partners. Can you address that, or should I take that up with DCHS?
I was told to stay in my lane, so I think it's probably
I'm giving you an out.
yeah. It's probably so just to address the first part of your statement. There's no one way that we're trying to identify clients. It's sort of a broad sweep, in terms of working with community-based partners. I would say that there's a lot of opportunity coming down the pike, where we are in a good position to deliver services for the community. So the state of Oregon had an opportunity for counties to apply for heat pump change-out programs. The Inflation Reduction Act is going to put a ton of resources into this arena as well, and will be eligible even as soon as next year for some of that funding, or so next calendar year. So having this infrastructure in place at the county to work with a segment of the population that is above that 200% federal poverty level, which is served by our weatherization program, I think gives us a lot of flexibility to be responsive to community needs. And community-based organizations in Multnomah County, a lot of them do have contracts with the city of Portland through the Portland Clean Energy Fund. So there is also a capacity issue. And so having the county at the table helps to increase the overall capacity. I don't think anybody's struggling for resources at the moment. More resources, always better. But we also have to build out a robust ecosystem as all this funding kind of comes down the pike.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly having the county at the table is really important. I guess further conversation about how that's all put together. I mean, I remember talking to Community Energy,
Community Energy Project.
Thank you. So it's an organization that's already going into homes, kind of knows who's out there and what people have, and it seems like there would be ways to just increase efficiency and reach by relying more on those partners. So
Yeah.
I'll just park that there, I think.
Yeah. Program staff works a lot with them, as does my team. So there's a ton of collaboration happening already. Yeah.
Great. And then just wanted to appreciate the tree planting. I think that's wonderful. And I was glad to hear you say East Portland, because I do think there are certainly REA Terrace in my district. There are parts of East and Northeast Portland that are also have small tree canopy. So
Yep.
look forward to continuing to expand those efforts. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. And I'm sure we will have more opportunity for some of your questions, Commissioner Jayapal, with DCHS as well. So, yeah. So, all right. Thank you so much. So next up, we have government relations. Justin Black, come on down. And just for situational awareness, we're running about 15 minutes late. No pressure.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, I will do my best to get us back on schedule. For the record, my name is Justin Black. I'm the Director of Government Relations here at Multnomah County. I use he, him pronouns, and I have a quick presentation to share with you all. But as that goes up, just a quick introduction by way of our office. We are the Government Relations Office. There are 6 of us in the office, so we're a pretty small office. We represent the county at the federal level, tribal level, state level, and the regional level with other governments to help express your desires as a board and our needs as a county. Many of the things we work on are policy related as well as budget related issues to make sure that we're well represented. We also do a fair amount of policy research, both on issues that are impacting the county, but also how we might be able to improve the lives of individuals who live in Multnomah County as well. And then in addition, we do grant coordination for the county. We help bring in resources from the federal level and nonprofit level for programs inside the county to help offset costs to the county. During my presentation, we're going to talk about current work. We'll give an overview of the staff and the budget, and then we'll talk about future work. So next slide. Current work. As you may remember, you all approved the addition of a tribal relations advisor in our office, Anna Allen. She's working busily on a tribal engagement plan. She has been doing a lot of outreach to the 9 recognized tribes in Oregon, going out and visiting them locally, but also doing outreach to nonprofits that serve the urban Native community here in Multnomah County to make sure that we are finding some aligned policies, some aligned programs, and generally working together better. Our long-term plan or work plan for this year is to really build out a robust engagement plan, both for commissioners, but also departments, so that we have really good alignment and a good consultation process. In addition, the renaming of the Savia Island Bridge, she's been conducting community meetings with tribal representatives to work on a list of names for you all to pick from to rename that bridge. In the grant space, really the pandemic kind of flipped everything over in grants. So we've been working, Sherry Campbell, to better align our grant process kind of in the new world we're in. I also say the new federal administration is much more grant heavy than the prior one. So really helping to identify opportunities where we can draw down funds from the feds. In addition, we have really realigned our policy evaluation and budget evaluation to be more equitable and to really call out places where we can empower underrepresented groups in policy-making conversations and budget conversations. A lot of that, and I will say we lean heavy on the budget of recent because that's where we find that we can make the most difference here at the county and policy-wise. I mean, budget really drives a lot of policy conversations. Just like looking at fees collections and how those burden certain groups over other groups. And we've done some deep dives especially in the world of justice, what fees look like once you enter the justice system and how those fees really keep you in the justice system. So we've done some really good work and partnered with others on looking at that. And I will actually say, in a case, Multnomah County does an incredibly good job of not having a ton of fees that burden people who have entered our justice system and other places. So good job, Multnomah County. Also expanding our federal work and our in-district work. We'll talk about it a little bit, but now that Congress is doing congressional directed spending, i.e. earmarks, we've really built up a robust engagement plan for our district staff so that they see firsthand the projects that the county is working on in places where the feds can invest. So, we got the original earmark for the BHRC to help with that budget. We have 2 more identified for the next round. And we also received, we're going to talk about it later, but money for Burnside Bridge. In addition, as I said, we spend a ton of time on budget analysis and really doing deep dives on how the state budget impacts our budget here at the county. Earlier, you heard from the sheriff talk about the 1145 funds that we get from the state that funds both DCJ program as well as dorm beds in our jail. We've done some extensive research on what the historic funding is from the county level as well as the state level. And what we know is that the county has stepped up year after year on funding those programs, where the state has actually gone pretty flat in their funding over the last 5 years. So just doing some deep budget analysis so that when we talk to legislators and agency folks, that we can really come with a lot of background and share that knowledge with them so they better understand the budget decisions they're making. We're currently tracking over 1,700 bills during legislative session. That's why it's only me up here, not others from our team, as the legislative session really takes a team effort in making sure that it all works. And I will just say, session is, we're at a difficult moment right now with one chamber not meeting on a regular basis. That is going to hurt a lot of policy bills. We are also expecting a revenue forecast next Wednesday that is not going to be sunny. And so we are preparing for a pretty hard budget conversation and a lot of negotiations over what the budget looks like for this biennium. And so I just want to kind of put that out there as something that we are expecting in the next couple of weeks, is some really hard decisions are going to have to be made. Next slide. Now for the quick part, this is the office. There's not very many of us. There's myself. There's Stacy Cowan, who is our senior state policy manager. Taylor Steenblock, who does our state and regional affairs. Sherry Campbell, who is the senior grants coordinator, as well as during the pandemic, she picked up all the local federal work. So she is the person really responsible for the earmarks that we have gotten and are on plan to get. So doing a fantastic job of kind of working out of her normal scope. And then Vanessa Elkin, who is our policy and research analyst, who who tracks all those 1,700 bills. She is the person who really keeps track of everything, works with departments to make sure that we understand how those bills are going to impact the county and county operations. And then our newest addition, Anna Allen, who is our tribal advisor, who has really gone out, getting a lot of miles in her car to get out there and to meet with tribal members and tribal elders and tribal leaders and to build that relationship between the county and those tribes. Next slide. As you can see, most of our budget is us. It is people. Our contracted services is the second largest one, and really our only contracted service is our federal lobbyist, Vicki Cram, who most of you have met, who has really helped us step up our game in Washington, D.C. But other than that, it is staff and a few supplies and mileage as we drive back and forth from Salem. Next slide. Successes. This is a weird, the every other year for us in the fiscal year is always a little odd because we spend the first half of the fiscal year preparing for the second half of the fiscal year. So getting ready for legislative session and getting our bills ready. We worked, I will say, really deeply on improving ballot measure 110 and trying to work with stakeholders and Representative Nose to come up with policy that is currently moving forward and just passed out of House Senate yesterday, I believe, or sorry, Senate Healthcare yesterday, but to improve the coordination between burns that are funded through ballot measure 110 and the local mental health authority, which is counties and CMHPs. It is not perfect, but we are hoping to see some big improvements on how those funds are distributed and how those funds are coordinated with local services that are already happening. In addition, working on funding for the Burnside Bridge, we are hoping to see a local bridge package drop in the Joint Transportation Committee this week that will fund, will give us some funds for Burnside Bridge, hopefully $20 million, with an eye on next legislative session to look for even more funds. But we'll also fund Bridge of the Gods and another Hood River Bridge. Working to ban the display of donated bodies and profiting off that. You all remember the incident at the Marriott during the pandemic Stacy's been working to make sure that that can no longer continue. And then transparency in community mental health budgeting. One of the things we've always struggled with is a clear understanding and articulation of what our community mental health program is funded for, what services are expected to be provided, and what the overlap in that is what services are actually funded by the state and how many of those services we are actually picking up at the county level that yet are required at the state level. So it's a little more transparency in how they budget for community mental health programs. And then funding, of course, working on funding for behavioral health, homelessness and housing, community corrections in the sheriff's office, along with many other county services. We spend a lot of time on making sure that the state understands what they are funding at the local level and that they value those investments so that they will continue them. Other successes this year is we received a $2 million earmark, congressionally directed spending for the Earthquake Ready Burnside project. It's really important for us to get these federal dollars in the door. It makes us more attractive for the large federal grants. So we are scraping, any dollar we can find at the federal level towards this project so that when we apply for grants like the Bridge Grant or the Impact Grant, that we can show that they've already invested a little bit in the project, and so they should probably continue to invest in the project. Congresswoman Blumenauer identified 2 projects for us in the next coming round of congressional directed spending. I will say that now we kind of are in the waiting game of whether Congress can pass an appropriation or not, because we are dependent on that appropriation passing for us to get those earmarks. So we're in a little bit of a waiting game on those 2 things, but really happy that he put those 2 forward, and those will move forward. And I think beyond that, really working with other offices and other departments and community members on our grant applications. We were able to get an impacts grant for behavioral health this last year, working in consultation with the Siletz tribe and others to actually fund some increased access for behavioral health services in our community. And we're really proud of that work that we do right there. Next slide. Questions, look at that.
Good job. All right, we'll go to the board for questions. I believe it's time to start with Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Justin. I really don't have any questions. I think you all were here recently, and I did want to give a shout out to Taylor. We went and had lobby day regarding the Community Resilience Hub, and she did a phenomenal job of shepherding us through all the important legislators. So anyway, it was just great to have her there and to make sure that our voices were heard. So keep up the good work and get us that $2 million for Cook Plaza, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myron.
Thank you. I actually had a question about the federal earmarks and how the decisions are made about elevating certain requests versus others for that money.
Yeah, sure. So we work with the chair's office and program and departments to really look at what are those projects that are out there. It's really a narrow window of projects that qualify for it. You have to find a project that is basically started, but won't be finished for a couple years. The timing of a congressional earmark is completely unknown. When we did the earmark for the BHRC, we learned about it, that we were on board in March of 2021. We didn't know that it actually passed Congress until 2022, and then we didn't get the money until the end of 2022. And we had no sway over that timeline, and in fact didn't get the funds until the project was a month away from completion. So it's a real it's a really bad timeline. Yeah, very few projects fit in kind of the okay to go there.
It sounds a little like the FEMA sort of, yeah. And then, and I too want to just say thank you so much to your small but mighty, incredible team for all of the work that you do and all of the support you give and all of the questions you answer. It is really just great working with every single one of you, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dryball.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Justin. That's really what I have as well, is just appreciation. As Commissioner Myron said, every single person on the team, I have really enjoyed working with Taylor on transportation. She has been very patient with me as I learned that complicated area in a complicated time. And she's done a great job whenever I've seen her testifying, just a great job on the advocacy. Really appreciate also you and Stacy jumping in on the project around creating a structure for asylum seekers. That came up late, just within the last couple of months. It's really important for the state and for the county. And I've really appreciated the way that you are kind of taking on the coordination between the state, ODHS, county, potentially other partners as well. And then Vanessa's research. We've been exploring what levers the county, the thing that I've been working with her on is exploring what levers the county might have to increase availability of affordable housing, usually the city, but what can we do? And so her research on institutional investors, and then also on, whether we can do more to gain value from our tax foreclosed properties, have really appreciated that as well. And of course, your overall guidance and advice.
Thank you. The joke always is Vanessa makes me look really smart on a lot of things. So really appreciate
Lead
that.
of Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and ditto to those comments about what a great job you all are doing, and sympathies to the challenging session that's going on down there. I think the chair and I may have to go back down there and put things into shape. I was wondering if you could just talk briefly a little more about the tribal engagement work, and is there anything you'd like to say about the prior relationship between the county and the tribes, and what kind of preliminary insights government relations might have learned from this important relationship building, and how the tribes are wanting to interact with the county in the coming year?
Yeah, no, it's been, I got to say, just a tremendous learning experience for myself, having never really worked in this arena of tribal relations. And so, I will say, we were very slow and deliberate in the hiring process, and actually engaged a number of tribes and a number of urban native leaders, and kind of building out what the job description looked like. And, really excited when Anna decided to apply and be part of that. And, I think she's taken the same approach, which is she's been out in community, meeting with leaders and elders, and really having a conversation with them about what they want the relationship with the county to be like. And it's not like we had a bad one. I mean, frankly, most tribes were really complimentary about their relationship with the county and with departments. I think it was really just a desire to see a more centralized person to go through to make sure that that they were heard at every level. And so really now it's, Anna's job is to, she's already doing this, which is to go out and find out what they desire, and then also to work with you all and to see, where you feel you would best fit in being part of that conversation. I think, what we've really learned is, a recognition of, tribes as sovereign governments, and making sure that when we're having a staff to staff conversation, we're also having an elected to elected conversation, and making sure that those bonds are there, and looking for opportunities between the county and the tribe. So, whether it's a service for the Native community who's here in Multnomah County, or whether it's, the board going out and visiting and seeing what's going on tribal land, and seeing, what programs they're offering out there that we might be able to then duplicate here. So really trying to create that cross-pollination between us and the tribes. And then, and I will say that is first and foremost is, that relationship with the recognized tribes. A close second to that in the job description is really building that relationship with the community-based organizations that serve urban natives, and trying to figure out where we align, and how we make sure that their voice is heard as well.
That's great, really important work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin, for the presentation, and just for all the work you did. If the wheels of democracy ever start turning down in Salem again, then we know that you will be right back there doing the good work. And I think I'm coming down later this month to help advocate as we get into those final days with the budget, because we know how much we've already heard, in this budget process, how much we rely on that. So thank you so much with that.
Thank you.
For that. And we will move over to our next presentation, Abby Stamp with the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council budget. Good afternoon, Abby.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Abby Stamp. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of the Multnomah County Local Public Safety Coordinating Council. For the rest of this half hour, we'll go ahead and call it LIPSIC for short. Thank you for putting up the slide deck, Tasia. And I'm inspired by some of Justin's openings and wanted to, before I just talk about the nuts and bolts of our budget, what we pay for, what we do, just to take a minute and acknowledge this strange experience of working in a small non-department that kind of belongs nowhere, but also belongs everywhere at the same time. And how much of our effort, of the work that happens behind all of the information I'm about to present to you, happens through relationship and happens through trust. And we do a lot of strategizing behind the scenes while we're in meetings and facilitating work to develop policy, draw down state dollars around who are the partners that we should be engaging with more, who might be having a rough time at the session and needs a little bit more TLC so we can get folks engaged. A lot of our time is spent in this adversarial system to make it as trusting and relationship focused as possible. And that is what I think is the secret sauce for us being able to work our way through some of these very complex and challenging processes to help create more justice in our legal system. And on top of that, we're responsible for all the collaboration. All right, just wanted to say that before we start in. Next slide. Thank you. So what I'm going to cover today is starting to lead with equity and talk about what we do as a small non-department, to lead with race and what that looks like in terms of our policy advocacy. Staffing and budget, who we are and how much we cost. I also want to talk about some of our program changes, some of our successes, and the details of my one-time only request, and then take some time for questions and answer. Next slide. So in addition to spending time to figure out ways to integrate the workforce equity strategic plan and professional development processes with my small staff, a lot of the work that we accomplish at the policy and data level really is leads with race as much as is possible with those jurisdictions that do not work under the Multnomah County umbrella, where we live and breathe safety, trust, belonging, and our workforce equity strategic plan. And what that really looks like is making sure that when we make policy changes, for example, in our Justice Reinvestment Program, that we look at data to ensure that most individuals from BIPOC communities or people of color are able to have the experience or opportunity to have that diversion or an alternative response that is not traditional incarceration and prosecution is supported through data and a willingness to have that conversation. Our pretrial project is very focused on equity. I've spoken individually with each of your offices, and Commissioner Rosenbaum also offered this to you as well if you're ever interested, about our MacArthur grant, our work as a safety and justice challenge site, and what that looks like and how much we are trying, and whenever possible, to use the equity and empowerment lens and equity processes as we look at improving justice and equity in the pretrial system. Our Transforming Justice project absolutely uplifts the voices of not only people impacted by legal systems, but those individuals impacted by legal systems also impacted by poverty, xenophobia, and 400 years of oppression in those communities of color. The Justice Fellowship is part of our MacArthur grant, and that is an effort to recruit and train members of the community to go through a fellowship leadership civic engagement process, curriculum that we're in the process of starting to build, to sit side by side with policymakers as peers and be able to understand our acronyms, and we understand their experiences, to really uplift and do power sharing in a different way that we have not been able to accomplish so far. The community violence position that I mentioned Wendy Lynn Kelly has occupied since December really has a focus on the communities most impacted by gun violence and community violence. And last but not least, we are in the process of developing, in partnership with the Square One project at the Columbia Justice Lab, what a racial reckoning roundtable would look like here in Multnomah County, really lifting up our history here on these lands and how that racism and institutional The institutional racism and the oppression that has been in our history is alive and well today and functioning within the legal system. Next slide. So moving into a bit more nuts and bolts, here's my color-coded org chart. When I started at Lipstick 10 years ago, we were 2.5 FTE with 1 funding stream. Now we are 7 with 4 funding streams, so it's become a bit more complex. So myself and Christina Yausi are funded by our 1145 Community Corrections Funds. Lili Yamamoto has been a temporary staffer for about 8 years, being able to fund her position with the Justice Reinvestment Grant. She's a project manager for Justice Reinvestment. I just mentioned Wendy Lynn Kelly, who is generously funded through County General Fund. And then Sarah Mullen, David Mitnick, and our newest part-timer, Adam Renan, are all funded through the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge Funds. Sarah and David work on the pretrial work, and Adam is focused on the Justice Fellowship Project. Next slide. So here's our program offers. You'll see the kind of bread and butter program offer is a 1009A, which is our primary offering to the county. The FTE there you'll see is only 2, myself and Christina, but that also includes the other Safety and Justice Challenge positions. So the 2 limited duration assignments, which is Sarah and David, and then the on-call for Adam. So it says only 2 FTE, but it really funds over 4. But because they are LDA, they're not full-time equivalents. Next is House Bill 3194, and that is currently Lili Yamamoto at a 0.8, and we had to reduce her down from 1.0 because of budgeting. And then Transforming Justice, I'll talk about in a bit, and then the Community Violence Coordination. One thing I do want to flag is part of the reason the Justice Reinvestment number is so large is because that is our contracted victim services work that is carved out from House Bill 3194 legislation. So 10% of our dollars go to 3 victim services providers that we reprocure as needed by procurement rules. And those dollars actually are expended through December of this year. And so we may need to come back and do some right sizing as needed to, and a revenue amendment to make sure that that is all built out and squared up with the budget versus the spending timeline of that grant. Next slide. Thank you. So what you've got here is the light blue is the FY23 and darker blue is FY24. So the general fund was reduced by $100,000. The Transforming Justice implementation funded one time only in 23 and in 24. Last year, the amount was $250. This year, it is $150. So that is that decrease there. I'll also talk about what the other general fund goes for when we get to those categories. So the state and federal fund is reduced both in state and in grant funding, and some of that is planned. With the MacArthur Foundation grant, we've been getting $2 million every 2 years for a few years and now, or a few grant cycles now. And the MacArthur Foundation is starting to wind down the Safety and Justice Challenge. And so those jurisdictions who are part of our cohort are starting to see those dollars decrease. They were very clear from the beginning that that was going to happen. And that was the reason we chose the project we chose, because we wanted to be able to have a quick, incredibly intense infusion of resource to help make sure our pretrial project could be started and completed by the time the grant finishes. And it wouldn't be a cumbersome ongoing cost to the county or other partners. So that was anticipated. And then because both the 1145 Community Corrections Funds and the 3194 Justice Reinvestment Funds are based on the Community Corrections formula, we are seeing those dollars decrease. As you all know, when I first started 10 years ago, it was at about 21, a little over 21%, and now we're down to 16% of the state felony supervision population, which just decreases the amount we get. So while we definitely want to have fewer people on probation, we do have to reckon with the fact that it is less funding for us to do the things we want to do. And next slide. Great, thank you. So in FY23, the new ongoing general fund, you'll see that bump in FY23 was for the Gun and Community Violence Project Manager. That was at $176K. In 2023, we also included $1.1 million in grant funds from MacArthur. And this year moving forward, it's down to $675. And again, that was planned a reduction, and we anticipate that. And we will have that wind down over the next couple of years. Some of the work has been slower to roll out than we had wanted. It's hard to spend some of the money sometimes. Luckily, MacArthur Foundation is very generous and flexible grantor. And so we continue to have no cost extensions, and we will be ensured that we will spend down those dollars in due time. And I'm very glad as the pretrial work launches that we will continue to have resource to evaluate and iterate to ensure public safety and to protect victims and folks' liberties and freedoms as well as this work rolls out and needs to be evaluated. The MacArthur reductions also include 1 FTE and 1 LDA, as those were positions in the IT department that built out the back end IT case management support and tool for the risk assessment instrument and the case management tool for pretrial monitoring. And those were, again, temporary. They built the tool is built, their services are no longer needed. And any other significant year-over-year changes between 23 and 24. The state, as I mentioned, Community Corrections 1145 was decreased. That's only $109,000, but when you're a small shop, it's not only $109,000. That's quite a hit. And way back in the early days, we actually had an additional person. We had a whole other person, an FTE, to do data. All LIPSIC, not focused on any grant project, but whatever the commission or the chair's office wanted to look at, that was what that person's responsibility was. And we no longer have that resource because we just simply didn't have enough funds to fund a fully built out FTE. Last thing is the HB 3194 reduced by about $425,000. And again, part of that is FTE in the LIPSIC office, but the vast majority is services for victims of crime. Our current contractors are IRCO, the Lutheran Community Services, and Oregon Crime Victims Law Center. And so we have to work with those agencies as we fluctuate with that funding and make sure that they can stay afloat, provide them any technical support or assistance that we can while those funds kind of go all over the place because there's a number of revenue streams between the core funding and some competitive funding as well. And they are incredible partners and very gracious for whatever they can receive from us. Next slide, Tasia. All right, so this is just looking at a trend. What you're noticing again, FY23 is that addition of the general funded position, the Community and Gun Violence Coordination Project Manager, and then the FTE and IT, the FTE position in Information Technology was added and for the MacArthur grant. And as I mentioned, that position is eliminated because that work was completed. Next slide. All right. Away from bars, now to the pie. So we've got a few different categories to discuss. Personnel at the 1.1 is 1.1 million, so it's 43% of our budget. It's 3.8 FTE plus 3 additional limited duration positions funded by MacArthur. The contracted services for 17% of the budget is the victim services providers I just enumerated, and the Transforming Justice contract we have, in addition to the Justice Fellowship contract, which is small, but we are partnering with an outside entity to help us generate the curriculum as we bring Justice Fellows through this Leadership Academy. Materials and supplies, and then finally, internal services. Why is that so big? 34% funds Decision Support System Justice. So while I wish I could just say, you know, it's for office space and for fleet, it's not. The county commission in 2010 moved the Decision Support System Justice, which is the criminal justice data warehouse, from, I think it was IT, over to LIPSIC. And so I help administer that. And the Decision Support System Justice is kind of an old beast, but an important beast. Many of you, I hope all of you receive, for example, the sheriff's monthly jail report. That is generated through DSSJ. It is a way for participating agencies to contribute data sets and data elements to this larger warehouse where those elements are joined across cases, across individuals, so that we can watch from booking at our jail all the way through probation. We're able to do more longitudinal studies, and all of the information is in one spot, allowing our system partners to use DSSJ, the Decision Support System Justice, as a trusted tool. So if it went away, our work would come to a screeching crawl. And we want to be data driven and tout that ability to do so. And DSSJ is a big reason that we are able to do that. Next slide. Significant program changes. So with the $150,000 one-time only, what I'm hoping to accomplish in this next year is basically a transition. We completed our vision. We completed our core strategies. I'm working with the consultant right now to help get us the materials, the resources, and the tools needed that we can launch and do amazing things. And that's going to look like a handbook about best practices, how to conduct human-centered design, perhaps some sample charters, but really giving all of the to-be-determined implementation groups, leaders, sponsors, champions, and their folks, the tools needed to go do amazing things. And that is the work that will be completed by the end of June. And so next year is the work of figuring out what's next. How do we do that? What's the best space to do that? And what will that look like? And so what with these dollars we'll be able to probably give some folks some contribution to thank them for their wisdom and their time, and really pay folks for participating and offset their costs, of course, probably do some light facilitation and do some work to figure out what the future of this project looks like, where it lives, and kind of where it goes from where we are today. Next slide. We blow through a few highlights from this past year. I just mentioned we completed the vision and core strategies, which is quite a monumental task with all of the folks from the community and internal stakeholders we engaged in that process. We had 18 two-hour sessions to go deep on these strategies and a 3-day work session to kind of wrap some of those up. The best thing I can share is we went from 18 core strategies to 9 groups of strategies. So we didn't cut them in half. We just were 50% more effective and more simple way to articulate the work. We launched the planning work for this racial reckoning project. I've engaged with some of Chair Vega Peterson's staff and the Square One project to figure out what that looks like. Meetings with folks in the community as well. And really Square One is leading that, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm glad they're here to support this work. And ongoing facilitation and monitoring of justice reinvestment is a very large task. Even though that project is 10 years old, it continues to be incredibly complex with the turnover of folks running the project, with the high level of need of the individual who are going through that project, with the evolution of specialty courts. So there's intersection there. The intersectionality of justice reinvestment with other policy programs and staffing and services in the community is pretty profound. Lila Yamamoto, leading that work, is really managing policy, the impact on racial and ethnic disparities, helping support the defense and the DA and the court to figure out our case backlog, which continues to be significant, and also providing contracts and supporting our 3 victim services providers. Next slide, please. The administrative glory of being able to apply to the Criminal Justice Commission for grants. It's fantastic to have the opportunity to do so, and being in a non-agency or a non-department allows us to collaborate with our partners to ensure we can draw down as many state dollars through the CJ's 3 grants as possible, that we apply for 5 different grant opportunities there. And then finally, the launch of the Justice Fellowship. It's taken some time to get moving, and it's really exciting that we are finally starting to plug down the track. Adam has been a wonderful add to our little team, and we just started an engagement with the community partner to help figure out what curriculum is. And having been through a leadership academy, I'm really excited to offer the same type of opportunity to members of our community who are really invested in criminal justice policy and want to really up their skills and participation and voice at some of those policymaking tables. Almost done. Couple more slides, Deja. Thank you. The public safety assessment, which is the new pretrial risk assessment tool, launches June 1st. I'm very excited to have a better risk-based pretrial monitoring system. We want to both protect the community in terms of public safety and also protect victims' rights, and also protect liberties and protect the constitutional right of presumption of innocence prior to conviction. That work is just starting to get pretty darn busy. So you'll probably see a few of us here doing a bigger, deeper briefing once we have some data to share and talk a bit more about how that work is rolling out. This past year has been incredibly intense, making sure that we are ready for this June 1st launch. And then as Commissioner Stegman learned more when we were in St. Louis last week, the LIPSIC continues to be really a national leader around collaboration and some of these tables about how to really rectify efforts for decarceration while maintaining public safety through MacArthur, other networks, and the Square One Project. Next slide. I've already discussed this, but we had a slide to show our one-time only requests. I just wanted to throw in the transforming justice imagery because that's the, for lack of a better term, branding, so folks can recognize it. With $150,000, we will proceed as we are able to do so and really figure out more of those details of what that looks like as we get the deliverables by the end of this fiscal year and figuring out what how we can jumpstart implementation with that money. Last slide before questions, please, is really all of the things that continue to change, and we just try to right size and respond to that. State funding, both with SB 1145 and 3194, we just do what we can to support our partners and do the best we can with what the funding ends up being. Because it's so formulaic, there's not a lot of, it's a little reactive. So it's one of those kind of you get what you get and you don't get upset. What I used to mantra to my child when they were in preschool. So we really work with what we're given and make sure that the priorities of our chair and the priorities of the executive committee are really uplifted and that we're using those sometimes limited resources in the most productive and thoughtful way. And last but not least, we've had such an incredible run with the MacArthur Foundation since 2015. As those dollars start to diminish, we're going to need to figure out how to uplift our partners, such as the Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney, the courts, the Department of Community Justice, just to make sure that there is a clear transition of project management and ownership, that the ability to kind of champion and agitate from the outside, being LIPSIC, is going to start to diminish, and watching these organizations take these policy changes and deciding what they want to evaluate and run with that is going to be required, and also I think pretty exciting. I think that's it. The last one should be a big question mark. There it is. Oh, and I wanted to say thank you to my amazing team. So to Sarah, Lily, David, Christina, Wendy, and Adam, it's a pleasure to get to work with them every day. It truly is. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And I believe we are ready to start with Commissioner Myron. Oh, no, I think it's Commissioner Jayapal. I was doing it all backwards. Okay. Oh, it is? Okay, go.
With your gut. Thanks so much, Abby, and team. I have just a few questions, and one is sort of a bigger picture, which is around the kind of the purpose and operation of LIPSIC, and it ties into what is LIPSIC statutorily required. I mean, LIPSIC is required to exist by statute.
Yes.
What is required of a LIPSIC? Like, what is it anticipated to be? And are there metrics, goals, things that measure whether it's being effective as a LIPSIC?
It's a great question, Commissioner. Thank you. The Local Public Safety Coordinating Council Executive Committee, not the office, is required to do two things: approve and submit the county's community corrections plan and approve and submit the county's juvenile crime prevention plan. Full stop. When you read the resolution that the county passed in 1995, there's a little bit more language around coordinating, advising the board, and that really has ebbed and flowed depending on leadership and what the leadership would like to do. Sometimes we have one chair, sometimes we have co-chairs. It really just depends on what that looks like. So my goal is to advocate for criminal justice reform and to follow my leader and make sure that the executive committee gets what it needs from myself and the office. So what I've tried to do in the metrics that you see in our program offers is to take them from number of meetings held to something a little bit more beefy, like the number of recommendations brought to the commission, something that's much more not so output, but more outcome. And that's what I've tried to work on through the years.
Thank you. I mean, so the last sort of executive committee concept paper, whatever it is, the thing from 1995, has there been an update to that, or is that kind of still
No, that was legislation that created LIP6, and then there was a county resolution to adopt that. What we've been working on in the interim, Commissioner Myron, is we have bylaws, which we completed about a year recently, I think about a year ago. We tried to deploy them for the first time at our last meeting and identified some places where we need to add some detail and make them more effective. And I will defer to my chair if she wants to add anything, but I think some addition of protocols, more structure is something that we're both really interested in growing to ensure effectiveness, clear actions and outcomes of not only the executive committee, but also the subcommittees as well.
Yeah, I mean, speaking specifically just towards the executive committee pieces, in reviewing the bylaws that were created and really trying to implement them, there were, just areas that were lacking in terms of clarity and things where I think in the board work that I've done in other places, so, you just have more details around that. And what I'm really looking for is to adding a little bit more structure and structure around the roles on LIPSIC. There's actually certain roles that are designated in the bylaws, in the ordinance, that I would say have not been really enforced. And I think there's clarity of roles. There's also a big subcommittee structure that has come up that it's not clear at all what, if any, connection those subcommittees have to the executive committee. And that's something where I think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of making sure there is that connection and making sure there's clear directives on the purpose of those subcommittees and how they relate to the work and the charge of the overall executive committee.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Chair. That's really great that you're working on that and identified that. And I also think about the opportunity with LIPSIC as, when so many people come to me and say things like, with all of the public safety issues we are experiencing in our community, and we need a central convening, like we should get together the group that has like the police chief and the behavioral, like all of these different entities together to like think about immediate approaches or different strategies. I'm like, well, that kind of thing exists. And I would love to talk to you, Abby, you chair, fellow commissioners, about that structure and whether it can be a place to like problem solve and vision, both within that structure, because there's a huge opportunity. The people at that table are the decision makers. And I know, having attended those meetings for the past years, again, prior to new leadership, they have often been meetings where information is just sort of presented to a group of people, and there's not really any action for the group. So thank you so much for that information. It's really helpful. For the transforming justice work, I would love to see a breakdown of how much has been invested in total in the work over the past, since its inception. And what, it sounds like there will be a handbook that is sort of putting all of that together for community partners. Is there a consideration of a system to oversee or coordinate all the community partners who will be doing this, so it makes a meaningful whole and is holistically overseen rather than a bunch of disparate partners kind of who are pieces of the puzzle but don't have connection.
Those are the conversations that the chair and I are engaged in right now.
Okay, is there a way for commissioners to be involved in any of those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this is a part of the larger work of also of like, what do we want Lipsick to be? And I think
Yeah,
that's something
yeah.
where it's also like a very important for Lipsick itself and the executive committee members to be a part of that conversation too. So it's just, we're having some preliminary conversations. I think it really came out of recognizing that there are clear directives that of what Lipsick needs to do and what the executive committee needs to do, including, voting on the support of the community corrections plans for adults and juveniles, and also some grants, which are also in there. And then recognizing that really whatever else its functions are going to be are not set in stone. So that does require conversation around what that looks like and what that's going to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, look forward to those conversations. And in terms of some of the grants and the MacArthur grant, I want to bring up, this has come up in so many prior budget, again, going back in time, but the Diane Wade House, was that MacArthur grant funded throughout, or?
No, the MacArthur Foundation provided seed money, and DCJ made the commitment that it would follow up and do ongoing funding and procuring provider and administering the whole program.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
I will
welcome.
save my questions for DCJ. And the DSSJ, is that the good? Okay, acronyms, such an essential purpose for that system. Where does it come from? Like, is it the best tool for the job? Is it current enough to be like meeting the needs that we have at this point in time? And is it integratable? Like, we talk a lot about data integration and sharing of information. Is it integratable and shareable more broadly?
That is a very, let me try to answer it succinctly, Commissioner. DSSJ was once described to me as our like trusty, 2010 Honda Accord. Sure, everybody wants like an electric vehicle, but that Accord, she always starts. It is not a data system with lots of bells and whistles. Former Commissioner Judy Shiprack commissioned an evaluation of DSSJ in 2014-ish, and the recommendations were significant investments that the county at that time could not make, many millions of dollars to make it bells and whistles in a high-performing data system. Since then, we have had a change in the courts data system and the Portland Police Bureau law enforcement data systems that created an additional need to fund how to get court data into DSSJ from the new system, because it wasn't just you flip a switch and it's good to go. It took a lot of development and IT time to do that. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Oregon State Police have determined that the local Public Safety Coordinating Council does not fall under Criminal Justice Information System federal law protection. So we are not a CJIS covered entity, just like they're HIPAA covered entities. CJIS is the criminal justice data side of things. And so for that reason, if DSSJ continues to live in Lipsick, apologies for the acronym, we will never be able to integrate any CJIS protected data into DSSJ as decided by the FBI. I've tried with multiple chiefs and mayors to figure out a way to share arrest data, because arrest is one of the key indicators of recidivism. We are unable to do that in the current structure today. DSSJ, however, still starts, and she is a trusty machine for our data analysts to provide much of the data many of you review as it comes to criminal justice policy. So an investment would be an amazing thing. There are so many data sharing obstacles and challenges. We do have an intergovernmental agreement signed. It took a significant amount of resource to get that agreement signed because of all of the valid concerns about ethical and legal data sharing between criminal justice entities.
Wow. That is so interesting and important. And thank you for sharing that. And look forward to talking more about that as well. And then one final, just small question, which is around the Community Gun Violence Coordination Project Manager.
Yeah.
And I know it was mentioned as focusing on those most impacted by community violence and gun violence. And you and I have had this conversation a little bit, but it almost half of the people killed by gun violence are homeless. And yet there doesn't seem to be that intersection or focus on preventing gun violence in that community or context. And I would just be interested in getting more data around that. And will this person be someone who is going to take that on if we're talking about most impacted by gun violence?
That is a great question, Commissioner. So far, Wendy's focus has been on understanding what the county currently does in terms of program policy and funding, to really inventory the state of that work, in addition to the work of the city of Gresham and the work of the city of Portland, create relationships, understand what it is, go on ride-alongs with the FIT team, and just really understand what work is happening. And she's in the process of writing up just some summaries of what she's experienced over the past 5 months of her employment. What I will have her do is perhaps connect, or I'll connect with Stacy in the chair's office and figure out kind of what does that exploration look like? Because I think that's a harder thing to quantify or figure out what the coordination is, or what that might be. So because we have so many services for people who are justice involved already on supervision, we have so many tables of gun violence prevention around community or gang or group violence.
Yeah.
And that's where she's been focused so far.
Yeah. And because we have so many of those tables, you know, I think we don't have a table focused on gun violence amongst the homeless population. And I think I mean, I'm sure it all, there's intersections, I can't even count, but thank you so much for that. Those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Abby. Commissioner Myron has actually covered several of my questions. I'll quickly note, I'd be interested in learning more about the bells and whistles that came out of that 2015 evaluation. I mean, I'm, just curious as to what that would mean. Thank you for explaining why those internal services cost 800. I'm sure you've explained it every year, but I looked at that this year. I was like, what? Christian, what the heck? So thank you for that. The transforming justice piece, I obviously an ongoing conversation, and you and I have talked about this before, but I agree with some of what Commissioner Myron said, which is that we've put a lot of time into it. It's really important. There must be pieces of the work that come out of that reside in the county, and therefore, we can implement. And so the idea of packaging it all up and then handing it to kind of some undetermined place doesn't feel as if we would be then. I mean, there are things we might be able to do on our own. What are those things? There are things that we might be able to coordinate. What are those things? Not at all objecting to the notion that community needs to own a lot of this, but to make sure that the parts that the county can act on, we are acting on. And you and I are talking about one such place, but there must be many others. So I think, yeah.
Thank you. And actually, at the last meeting that the chair and I had about this project, she suggested, let's carve out all of the things that the county is responsible for. Can you quantify it? Adam Renan is currently making that list.
Right.
Yep. Because I think the challenge is simplifying such a massive multi-year project, making it compartmentalizing it or partializing it, but then figuring out how to grow and figure out a governance and what does sponsorship champions, what's internal, external, and all of that is still yet to be figured out. But I really just wanted to thank the chair for saying there's some stuff that we can do. So let's carve that out first.
Great. Excellent. Perfect. And then lastly, on the gun violence coordination, I was going to ask for you to talk more about it. We're running short of time. I won't ask you to do that. So I'll just make a comment, which is to say, we're analyzing what's happening now between us and other partners. And I'm assuming that that's going to lead us again to a set of recommendations about how do some of these things overlap? Where are the gaps? How can we move it forward?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're running out of time, so I'll just follow up with you. I think the only thing I'd like to hear about is a little more about whether there are other areas where funding is impacting work that might need to migrate somewhere else and how that's going to work. But I can follow up with you after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Abby. Quick question. So on the transforming justice, do you have some idea when you talk about transferring the work to a CBO or what kind of CBO, or are we anywhere near that conversation?
Yeah, yes and no. I have engaged in very gentle emails and coffees and Zooms with folks just to inquire as to folks' interest. Everybody is very, very, very tapped out. And there's a grant opportunity that I'm trying to identify if there's a good fit for us or not. We haven't determined whether that's appropriate for Multnomah County to apply for. Just really recognizing that we are working within systems that are 400 years old. It won't take a few fiscal years to undo that. All of us are already very tapped out and have multiple crises we're managing. And yet, we still need to aspire to moving our systems towards a vision. And how do we support our community partners in a partnership way to do that when it is incredibly hard and complex. And I think what we all experience is just watching the chronic crises really weighing on people in the community, folks working in governments, trying to support folks working in the community, being the safety net for everybody. And I certainly hope that we'll be able to get creative and figure out what the future should look like, and how some partnership and some power sharing and some real collaboration outside of the criminal legal system actors might be able to create some longer term sustained change. I wish I had more succinct answer for you, but I simply don't.
No, I appreciate the word. Sometimes you have to get a little bit up the mountain before you can see over on the other side. So I get that. And then, and I know we've talked about the 1145 and the formula where we get, so I wish Justin was here, but so I'm just wondering, like, how do we approach that? Is a significant problem. And, what are there ways to get at that?
That is a great question for Justin.
Okay, I'll follow up with Justin. So, and let me just end with thank you so much. I had the opportunity to present at the Safety Justice Challenge last week, and I presented the Transforming Justice initiative that Abby and her team have worked so hard on. And so, Abby, thank you so much for helping me prepare my presentation. And it was really an honor just to uplift the incredible work. And when you look around, when you travel, we have our problems here in Multnomah County, but I'm telling you, we are so much farther along than many, many parts of the country. So I just want to uplift the work that you all do in your office, and thank you and appreciate your work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate this presentation, and keep doing all the good work. That's one of the things I'd have to say. It's the work that you do and your small team does really touches on not only like so many aspects of Multnomah County, but so many aspects of our entire community as we deal with the issues of community safety, of violence, of justice. And I just really appreciate the work that you and your team does. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
All right, we are at our final work session with workplace security, where we'll have Serena Cruz and Dorothy Elmore come on down. Welcome and good afternoon. And I am going to keep us on a tight timeline. I have someplace to be this evening. So do we all. So we'll try to definitely get through the material, and we will, if there are lots of questions, we can also bring you back or have questions submitted as well. We do have some work sessions later on in the budget process for folks to come back if necessary.
Hey. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dorothy Elmore. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Workplace Security. I have to put my glasses on so I can see. I've been with the county for almost a year, and I'd like to start today's presentation by thanking those that have provided direct support, guidance, leadership to me and my team. Their availability was always there. Dialogue was always open, honest, and calming, and wisdom was always on point. So thank you, Travis Graves. Thank you, Serena. Thank you, Tracy Massey, and the many others who have provided support to our team, which has led to our ultimate success over this past year. We are here today to share a programmatic update on Workplace Security Program. Next slide, please. The Workplace Security Program's vision is a trauma-informed, racial justice, equity-focused approach to safety and security for the county. It embraces creativity and collaboration with a range of stakeholders to mitigate conventional enforcement and provide proactive support to employees in the communities we serve. Next slide, please. To date, the program has had a one-time risk fund investment of $807,000 to resource 3 FTEs with subject matter expertise and leadership. Additionally, we received a one-time general fund investment of $260,000 to establish a multi-function security and communications hub that will provide 24/7 monitoring and emergency service operations countywide. Next slide, please. So who are we? Our team is comprised of 3 full-time subject matter experts with deep experience in proactive security and emergency service options, and 1 temporary staff with expertise in program management and training. I'd like to introduce you to Cheryl Leon Guerrero, who is the security manager, and Cheryl's behind me if she can wave her hand. She has 15 years working as a corrections officer in Washington State and has over 8 years in the field of private security. Her assignments included project manager for the G4S Security and a private vendor who is a private vendor with the City of Portland, and Allied Universal as Director of Operations for Oregon and the Southern Washington region. I also have Chris Rushing, who is to my left. He's a Senior Security Management Analyst, and he has 15 years in the U.S. Air Force in law enforcement and intelligence fields, and 30 years experience working, my fingers. And 30 years of both government and commercial safety security experience, to include field operations manager, where he managed all of the COVID and HMPXV monkeypox vaccination clinics for the Oregon Health Authority. Next, I have William Warren. He's a temporary security trainer. He has 25 years experience with the City of Portland in community engagement and training, with specific interest in train the trainer with FEMA Emergency Management Institute Community Emergency Response Team, and spent 3 years managing the City of Portland's facilities camp cleanup pilot project. Next slide, please. So what is the security landscape? As you know, the public safety landscape of Multnomah County has drastically changed over the last 5 years. Community, staff, and customers have experienced an increase in security threats, resulting in an increased exception to a safe and secure environment. To meet this challenge, our team has improved our response training, tactics, and processes to ensure security threats are mitigated and a sense of safety in each building is reestablished. Next slide, please. Integrated Workplace Security Program is standardized to meet the security and safety needs of the county and can be customized to meet the needs of the departments and facilities. Our intent is to maximize our limited resources to ensure the security needs of the community and county staff are met. Some of our security contracts were over a decade old and needed to be updated to meet the county's current security requirements. And it was imperative that staff, unions, and community customers have an avenue for open communication to share their concerns and collaborate on solutions. Next slide, please. More specifically, of the approximate 100 total county properties, we have prioritized the locations that have high level of security and safety concerns. Our clinics, to include clinics on school grounds, our shelters, our libraries, and those facilities that serve a high volume of public access. We have completed over 38 vulnerability security site assessments across all work centers and continue to respond to departments upon request. Security upgrades like panic buttons, improved physical visibility, adding cameras, automatic lock door capabilities, and others greatly enhanced the security position and made significant improvements to create a safe environment for staff and the clientele they serve. We have secured over $100,000 in radio assets to improve communication protocols at no cost to the county. We provide real-time, on-scene emergency response to county incidents and consult with staff and our law enforcement partners to prevent and/or mitigate threats of violence and ensure no harm is done to staff or others. We conduct timely investigations related to criminal activity on county property and threats made against county staff. We've completed an overhaul of updates to all programs, policies, procedures, documents, and rules for standardization and to ensure security protocols are implemented uniformly and consistently. Next slide, please. Now I'll hand it over to Chris Rushing, who will highlight our training efforts and accomplishments.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Chris Rushing. I'm the Senior Security Analyst with the Workplace Security Program. I use he, his, him pronouns. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about workplace security and highlight some of the accomplishments and the operational focus we maintain. Although in place only a short time, the Workplace Security Program has been hard at work improving security across the county. Some of our highlight accomplishments that you see before you, training. We're bringing on support, and we have brought on support to develop training packages for multiple topics, focusing on things like active shooter and trauma-informed and culturally informed security. We're really trying to evolve our security processes and our security vendor services. Communication tools. We have our Commons page up and a contact in order to contact us. So if somebody doesn't know our names or doesn't know who we are, they know how to reach us regardless. We have regular meetings with safety committees, union partners, and our work centers. And we've transitioned the existing contracts to Workforce Security Program. So this was migrating the contracts over to our control. We're looking to maximize efficiencies and centralize the reporting so that county data stays within the county. Next slide, please. Some of our operational focuses. The completion of the security vendor changeover. So we have an end, as you know, our vendor is changing out. We have an interim vendor in place. We have a phased timeline negotiated for these folks to come in, and we will be beginning our RFP process at the end of the year. We have countywide training that we're working on, which is a very robust training package designed to apply to all the different groups that you see listed. What this is really kind of knitting the security vendors and our staff together so that everybody knows how to deal with a situation or an incident when it occurs, as well as independent training for independent work centers. Our Security Operations Center is a 24/7 dispatch and escort field support function. So a lot of our staff work in the field and they have very limited support when they're in the field. And we want to be able to provide some rapid response capability and some support to those folks, as well as expanding our capabilities. We continue to increase our efficiencies and expand the services that are requested by our county staff and to best serve our customers. Next slide, please. Some of our operational focus also includes the boardroom upgrades. We're finalizing the implementation plan. And it's important to note that this particular upgrade, a lot of the vulnerability assessments that we did, they were simple fixes. They were fixes that could be done locally. Everything from readjusting a camera to the right security staff in the right location. This was one of those larger projects, and it was more unique. But a lot of the other ones were just addressed locally and with many times little cost. We continue to deal with policies and administrative guidance, so updating those, looking at what types of tools that we can use and what types of tools that our staff can use. We have a communications strategy in place. We're working with the communications division to do biweekly communication strategy with county communications. And we're working really hand in glove with the risk folks to provide a rollout for the RSK3, workplace violence prevention, and the origami rollout for data collection and data reporting. Next slide. And at this time, I would like to hand it over to Kirby McCurtis with the libraries, who is a tremendous partner of ours and working with us.
Hi, my name is Kirby McCurtis. I'm the Director of Location Services, and I use she, her pronouns. Safety and security has been top of mind for our leadership team at the library, so I was appreciative of the invitation to speak to you all today. First, I want to say working with Dorothy and her team has been a true benefit for the library. As we continue to evaluate and adjust our approach to security, we are taking guidance from the workplace security team and really value their expertise. To begin, I want to highlight a few achievements of our security program in the past year. Last June, we filled the library security manager vacancy. He is our liaison to the workplace security team and will continue to support improvements to the library's security program. Another significant achievement this year was completing our equity review of the library rules. It was an extensive effort, and the final product focused on reducing barriers and simplifying the rules overall. The updated rules went into effect this past March. Over 6 years ago, the library created the Library Safety Liaison Program. This was our effort to create an in-house security team in response to MSCO discontinuing FSO support. As recently as last spring, we added library safety liaisons. But like libraries across the nation, we have seen a serious rise in incidents in our spaces and decided to shift to a hybrid approach, utilizing contract security at some locations. As we all know, security is not a one-size-fits-all approach. So we evaluate security needs at the library locations based on the number of incidents, the type of incidents, and the size of the location. We also consider the impact having a uniform security presence may have on communities of color and disenfranchised communities that use the library. Central is our system's largest library and sees minor to major incidents multiple times each day. Given the size, scope, and needs of the location, we employ contract security, who have advanced training and expertise to support our staff and patrons using the building. Other smaller locations that may not see as many escalated incidents are supported with a different approach, including library safety liaisons. The growth of our program and the level of response and expertise requires a meaningful investment. For fiscal year 24, we are investing around $3 million to safety and security. This includes library safety liaisons, contract security coverage, additional security roles we have throughout the library, and much more. Going forward, we will continue to evaluate the needs of our locations and provide an appropriate level of support, including library safety liaisons and contract security. In cooperation with Local 88, we reached an agreement for library safety staff to obtain the required state certification for security personnel. They will continue to coordinate and receive training from the workplace security team. Additionally, we are improving how we track and report security incidents. We intend to implement a specialized software that allows us to better share information with the county. In summary, the library is committed to providing a welcoming space for all, and we are making a significant investment to support that goal. The library is grateful to the workplace security team and Dorothy for her leadership as we grow our program to best support the needs of our community using the library. We will continue to collaborate and create solutions that reduce barriers to library access. A significant part of our growth will be the continued assessment of library location needs and evaluation of incidents using a more sophisticated reporting tool. And we will use these measures and our collaboration with the county to enhance our program. Back to you, Dorothy.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for your time. We look forward to continuing our work, our collective work, to ensure that the county is a safe and secure place for all. Now we're ready for questions.
Thank you, Dorothy. We'll go to Commissioner Dipal to start us off. And yes, and we can always get answers back to folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. I think I just wanted to follow up on a question that I asked last week around the investment in security for the boardroom. And I think you may have answered this question, but I want to make sure. And my question last week was, we hear so many security concerns around the health building, around the libraries, around clinics. why is the investment here? Not that I'm opposed to an investment here, but how did we arrive at that as the priority?
I conducted a security site visit here along with the entire building, Multnomah building. And when I came to the boardroom, I looked at your cameras first, and I noticed that you have some vulnerabilities here in the boardroom. This is a very important space, and I'm used to the city space over in City Hall. When I come to this boardroom, I want to make sure that the chair, commissioners, and the support staff are completely safe. I did have some conversations with some commissioners and the chair at that time that they also had some concerns for safety in the room. This building itself isn't open, and it's great. It's opening and it's welcome, but it's also have some safety concerns that I have voiced. And there are no safeguards here coming into this space, meaning that anyone can bring anything into the boardroom and sit and listen. There have been some disruptions in not as many as City Hall, but there has been some disruptions that are concerning to me from some of the citizens or people who want to come in and testify. And so we had to bring some approaches and some ways to mitigate those disruptions and that concern. One is to enhance your cameras so we can shore up some of those vulnerabilities. I call them dark spaces, that we can actually have my security officers and the Security Operations Center be able to have some visual context to what's going on and seeing inside the room itself. The other is soft approach to security, meaning that we have plainclothes security. Myself and my team are in here on your Thursdays and some Tuesdays to add some added protection. And then we wanted to, you don't have your panic buttons. You each have a panic button. I don't know whether you know how to use your panic buttons, but we have some training. And then to shore up some of the actually securing of the space here. If there was an incident that happened out in the lobby, how can we lock this space down? And so we're looking at those kinds of things. And honestly, Commissioner, some filming on your doors to stop some projectiles from coming inside from outside in the lobby, to be pretty candid.
Yeah.
And open and transparent.
Well, I mean, I appreciate all of that. Again, as I said, but whatever your recommendations are, that I'm very comfortable with. I think I just am aware of the fact that our employees have safety concerns. And to the extent that there's a list of things that other buildings need, I'd want to make sure that we are prioritizing those as well.
Yes, they're all in alignment, but we took I prioritized all of your buildings by the needs, what we call a needs assessment, your McCoy, your Meade, your clinics, and all those. And I conducted site visits at those locations first. Your boardroom was almost last.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosenbaum.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your work, everybody who's testified and especially Dorothy, all your work. I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about these things, because having worked in the state capitol, which was also a completely open building, and every time there was the hearing about guns, for instance, there would be a lot of anxiety and just, I mean, really an unhealthy amount of fear, and particularly on the part of staff people who really had no choice but to just be there and deal with whatever came up. So, yeah, I mean, it's a concern. You want to balance, obviously, openness and accessibility for the public, but just a reasonable amount of safety. And, I have to say, when I go in the courthouse, I feel much safer, just because you have to go through metal detectors there. Not to say that's what we need to do here, but I mean, then people aren't bringing weapons in, and it's just a different level of security that you feel there. So, yeah, I'm not really asking for anything, but just glad to know that you're here and that you're thinking about all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have any questions, but just want to express my gratitude for having you here. I see Cheryl and Dorothy, and while obviously we're all concerned about our individual safety, there are people that come into this boardroom that also need to be protected and served. And so I just appreciate, like, I didn't realize, I'm not sure that I ever knew that we were being watched and that there were, quote, dark spaces. So that's just another level of importance because, people were like, well, we have the sheriff's office on the 4th floor. But frankly, by the time the sheriff's office gets down to the boardroom, that's plenty of time for something, very wrong to happen. So anyway, I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing around the libraries. I know we're short on time. But maybe we can talk offline, Dorothy, about, some of the concerns we've had at the McCoy building and how all of those, and I know that you're all working on them, but it'd be great maybe just to have a one-on-one to get an update about how those issues have been mitigated and the progress that we're making. But thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Commissioner Myron.
Thanks to all of you. And I really appreciate your leadership as well, and everyone, all of you on the team. And I too have questions. It sounds like there was an analysis, the needs assessment. Was that shared with commissioners? Is there a way that could be shared with us?
Travis Graves, Deputy COO. Thank you, Commissioner Myron, for inviting me up. Yes, so Dorothy's team did vulnerability assessments on like those 38 buildings. Those exist. We can share them with you. I think we have tried to hold them close in terms of not actually setting them out there, but we can absolutely follow up.
Great, thank you, because I have the questions too about like the Gladys McCoy building, for example, or why certain things versus another, and I'd just be interested in looking at those. And just also noting some of the data. There's all the stuff again about data and different systems, and it is coming up in virtually all of our departments, different data things that it's not clear how they intersect or connect. And so that's another thing I'm just really interested in following up on. But otherwise, that's it. Let's get the chair where she needs to go. Mm.
Thank you very much.
That was our last for our work session number 5. We will be back tomorrow evening for our first public budget hearing. It will be virtual and tomorrow from 6 to 8 p.m. There being no further business, we are adjourned.